The vacation my family took right after I finished my college entrance exams was meant to be a celebration, but it began with a familiar bitterness. We were staying at a luxury beachside resort, and my younger sister, Vivian, had forgotten her favourite designer swimsuit. It was a limited edition piece she'd been bragging about for weeks, and its absence prompted an immediate meltdown. She demanded that I make the 4-hour round trip back home to retrieve it for her. When I tried to refuse, pointing out how exhausted I was from the exams, my stepmother's patience snapped. "Clara, how can you be so selfish?" Elena hissed, her perfectly manicured nails digging into my arm. "Vivian worked so hard to get into that prestigious prep program. The least you can do is help your sister enjoy her well-deserved vacation." My father, instead of intervening, sided with her completely. He blamed me for not being responsible, insisting that as the older daughter, I should have helped Vivian pack properly. "It's your duty to take care of your sister," he said coldly. "Don't you want her to be happy?" The injustice of it all, layered on years of similar treatment, was too much to bear. I had just spent 3 grueling days taking the most important exams of my life, while they had spent those same days pampering Vivian and planning her victory celebration. Now they wanted me to drive 4 hours in my exhausted state just to fetch a swimsuit that cost more than my entire wardrobe. When I continued to refuse, my father's face darkened with rage. He slapped me across the face so hard that my vision blurred and the metallic taste of blood filled my mouth. Elena watched with satisfaction, while Vivian smirked from behind her designer sunglasses. "You ungrateful brat," my father snarled. "After everything we've done for you, this is how you repay us? Your sister deserves to have a perfect vacation. She's going to be somebody important someday, unlike you." My stepmother nodded vigorously. "Clara, you're being so dramatic. Just go get the swimsuit and stop ruining Vivian's special day. You're such a negative presence, always bringing everyone down with your attitude." The words cut deeper than the physical blow. For 19 years, I had endured this treatment, always hoping that somehow, someday, they would see me as worthy of love. But standing there, with blood trickling from my split lip, I finally broke down completely. I sobbed hysterically, right there in the resort lobby, my body shaking with years of suppressed pain and frustration. Their reaction was pure disgust. Elena recoiled as if my tears were contagious. "Look at this pathetic display," she whispered to my father. "She's embarrassing us in front of all these people." Vivian rolled her eyes dramatically. "God, Clara, you're such a drama queen. It's just a swimsuit. Why do you always have to make everything about you?" "That's it," my father declared, his voice filled with cold fury. "You're clearly having some kind of breakdown. We can't have you ruining this vacation for everyone else." He grabbed my arm roughly and marched me to our suite. "You're going to stay in your room and think about your attitude. When you're ready to apologise and go get your sister's swimsuit like a decent human being, then you can rejoin the family." He shoved me into the bedroom and turned the lock from the outside. I pounded on the door, pleading with them to let me out, but I could hear them gathering their beach things and heading out to enjoy their day in the sun. "We'll be back later," Elena called through the door. "Maybe, by then, you'll have learned some manners and consideration for others." I was still locked in that room when the 300-foot tsunami hit the coast at exactly 6 p.m. With no way to escape, I watched through the window in absolute terror as the massive wall of water swallowed everything in its path. The last thing I saw was my family's rental car speeding away from the resort parking garage. They had seen the wave coming and fled without even thinking to unlock my door. I was left to die alone, abandoned by the people who were supposed to love me most. When I opened my eyes again, the world snapped back into focus with jarring clarity. I was standing in that same resort suite, in that exact moment, with Vivian's shrill voice demanding I drive home to get her swimsuit. The scene was identical, a perfect, horrifying replay, but this time something was different. This time I remembered. "Clara, are you even listening to me?" Vivian's voice cut through my daze like a knife. "I said I need you to go home and get my Valentino swimsuit, the coral one with the gold hardware. I want to wear it for the photo shoot this afternoon." I stared at her in shock, my heart pounding as the memories flooded back. There she was, my 19-year-old sister, frantically rifling through her massive suitcase with growing frustration. Her long blonde hair was perfectly styled in beach waves, her makeup flawless despite her tantrum. She had clearly turned her luggage upside down, searching for the designer piece she'd bought specifically for this trip. Elena stood beside her, arms crossed and lips pursed in that familiar expression of disappointment that seemed permanently etched on her face whenever she looked at me. "Clara, stop daydreaming and help your sister. She has every right to want her favourite swimsuit for the photos." My father emerged from the bedroom, having already changed into his expensive resort wear. He looked every bit the successful businessman, with his silver hair slicked back and his Rolex catching the afternoon light. "What's all this noise about?" he asked, though I could tell from his tone he already knew exactly what was happening. "Clara is being difficult again," Elena reported immediately. "Vivian needs her swimsuit, and Clara is just standing there like a statue instead of being helpful." I looked past them, through the floor-to-ceiling windows of our ocean view suite, at the calm, sparkling blue water below. The sight made my blood run cold. Down on the beach, families were building sandcastles, and children were laughing as they played in the gentle waves. A couple was taking wedding photos near the water's edge, the photographer directing them to pose as the surf lapped at their feet. Everything was just as I remembered it. The entire scene was a perfect replica of that terrible day. I was back. Somehow, impossibly, I was back. Reborn on the very day my family had taken their celebration trip to the coast. And I was back just 6 hours before a catastrophic tsunami would surge from that peaceful ocean and destroy everything in its path. "Clara," my father's sharp voice jolted me back to the present. "Your sister asked you a question. Are you going to help her or not?" I looked at him, really looked at him, and felt a strange calm settle over me. This man had raised me for 19 years, and in all that time he had never once put my needs before Vivian's. He had never stood up for me when Elena was cruel. He had never celebrated my achievements the way he celebrated every minor accomplishment of his precious stepdaughter. "Well," Elena tapped her foot impatiently, "we don't have all day. Vivian has a spa appointment at 3, and she needs time to get ready for the photos after that." I turned to look at Vivian, who was now pouting dramatically in the way that always got her whatever she wanted. Her lower lip was pushed out, and she was fidgeting with her diamond tennis bracelet, a good luck gift from Elena for her recent acceptance to an elite private university. The same university I should have been attending, if I hadn't been forced to spend my entire senior year taking care of my father during his business difficulties, instead of focusing on my studies. The same university that had been my dream since I was 12 years old. Before Elena and Vivian entered our lives and everything changed. "I can't go," I said quietly. The temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. Elena's eyes narrowed dangerously. "Excuse me?" "I said I can't go home to get the swimsuit." I kept my voice steady, even as my heart raced. "I'm too tired from the exams, and the drive would take 4 hours round trip. There are boutiques right here in the resort. We can buy Vivian a new one." Vivian gasped as if I had slapped her. "Buy a new one? Clara, do you have any idea how much my Valentino cost? It's a limited edition. You can't just replace it with some cheap resort shop garbage." "Your sister is right," Elena chimed in, her voice dripping with disdain. "Vivian has impeccable taste. She can't be expected to wear some tacky tourist trap bikini for her photos. These pictures are going to be in her portfolio when she starts modelling next year." I almost laughed at the irony. Elena was worried about Vivian's modelling portfolio, but in 6 hours, none of us would be alive to see those photos anyway. None of them knew what I knew. That this picture-perfect beach day was about to become a nightmare of unimaginable proportions. "Then one of you can go get it," I said, my voice growing stronger. "I'm not driving anywhere." The silence that followed was deafening. For a moment, nobody moved. Then my father's face began to turn an alarming shade of red. "What did you just say to me?" he asked, his voice deadly quiet. I looked at him steadily. In my previous life, this was the moment when his hand would connect with my face, when Elena would lecture me about being selfish, when they would lock me in this room to await my death. But this time, I knew what was coming. This time, I could prepare. "I said I'm not going," I repeated. "Find another solution." The explosion that followed my refusal was everything I remembered and worse. My father's hand came down hard across my cheek, the sound echoing through the luxurious suite like a gunshot. But this time, I didn't crumple. This time, I had been expecting it. "You selfish little brat," he roared, his face contorted with rage. "After everything we've given you, this is how you show gratitude. Your sister needs that swimsuit." Elena stepped forward, her eyes gleaming with malicious satisfaction. "I've had enough of your attitude, Clara. You've been nothing but a burden since the day I married your father. Vivian is going to be somebody. She has a future. You're just dead weight." The words should have hurt. In my previous life, they had destroyed me. But now they felt hollow, powerless. How could words from dead people wound me? "Fine," I said, forcing my voice to remain calm. "If it means so much to all of you, I'll go get the precious swimsuit." The change in their demeanour was instantaneous. My father's anger melted into smug satisfaction. Elena's cruel smile widened. Vivian clapped her hands together in delight. "That's more like it," my father said, straightening his resort shirt. "A little discipline never hurt anyone. Maybe now you'll remember your place in this family." "Oh, Clara," Vivian gushed, suddenly all sweetness and light. "Thank you so much. You're the best big sister ever. And while you're home, could you also grab my white sundress? The Chanel one? I might want to change for dinner." I nodded meekly, playing my part perfectly. "Of course, Vivian. Anything else?" Elena's eyes lit up with fresh demands. "Actually, yes. Since you're making the trip anyway, bring my jewellery case. The blue velvet one from my dressing room. I forgot my pearl necklace, and I simply must have it for the resort's gala tomorrow night. And my golf clubs," my father added. "I booked a tea time for early morning. They're in the closet near the garage." I smiled sweetly at each of them, memorising every detail of their faces. "I'll bring everything. Don't worry about a thing." "Good girl," my father said, patting my shoulder condescendingly. "This is the Clara we know and love. Helpful, considerate, putting family first." As I gathered my purse and car keys, I listened to them making plans for their perfect afternoon. Vivian was going to get a seaweed wrap at the spa. Elena had booked a couples massage with my father. They were going to have champagne on the beach and watch the sunset from the resort's exclusive cabana area. "We'll probably be at the beach bar until late," Elena said, not looking up from her phone as she scrolled through spa services. "So, don't wait up for us when you get back. Just put everything in our rooms, and we'll see you in the morning." The casual dismissal was so typical, so perfectly them. Even in my previous life, they had barely acknowledged my return trips as from their errands. I was simply expected to deliver and disappear. "Actually," I said carefully, "I was thinking I might stop somewhere on the way back. Maybe grab dinner in the city. I haven't had a chance to celebrate finishing my exams." My father waved his hand dismissively. Fine. Just make sure you're back before midnight. We have early plans tomorrow." As I walked toward the door, Vivian called out sweetly, "Drive safely, Clara, and don't speed. We need you in one piece to carry our things." The three of them laughed at her little joke, and I forced myself to join in. Just a few more minutes of this performance, and then I would be free. But as I reached for the door handle, Elena's voice stopped me cold. "Oh, and Clara, next time don't make us ask twice. It's really quite unbecoming for a young woman your age to be so difficult about helping family." I turned back to face them one final time. These three people who had made my life a living hell for so many years. My father, who had chosen his new wife and stepdaughter over his own flesh and blood. Elena, who had poisoned him against me from the day she entered our lives. And Vivian, the golden child who had never heard the word no and never would. "You're absolutely right, Elena," I said, my smile never wavering. "Family should always come first." The drive to the resort entrance felt like a funeral procession. I knew every turn, every landmark, every detail of the route because I had driven it in absolute despair just 6 hours ago. Or was it 6 months? Time felt fluid now, meaningless in the face of what I knew was coming. At the front desk, I told them I needed to retrieve some forgotten items from home and would be back later that evening. The concierge, a pleasant woman named Patricia, noted it in their system and wished me a safe trip. "Your family seems so lovely," she commented. "Your sister was just asking about photography packages for tomorrow. Such a beautiful girl." "Yes," I agreed. "She really is something special." Once in my car, I drove exactly 3 miles from the resort before pulling into a gas station parking lot. I sat there for several minutes, hands trembling as the weight of what I was about to do settled over me. In my previous life, I had been the victim. I had died, scared, alone, and unloved. This time, I would be the author of their fate. I pulled out my phone and scrolled to my stepmother's contact information. She had insisted I use the formal Mother Elena in my phone, even though she had never been anything resembling a mother to me. Instead of driving home, I began driving toward Beacon Hill, a mountainous area about 40 minutes inland. At 4,500 feet above sea level, it would be the perfect vantage point to wait out what was coming. But first, I had one stop to make. At a hardware store in the nearby town, I purchased several boxes of industrial-grade screws, the kind with sharp, penetrating points. The elderly cashier assumed I was helping with a construction project and wished me luck with my building endeavours. If only he knew what I was really building. A trap that would ensure my family's perfect beach day became their last. Back at the resort's parking garage, I found their rental car exactly where my father had left it. The sleek, black sedan gleamed under the fluorescent lights, a testament to his need to maintain appearances even on vacation. I worked quickly, scattering the sharp screws under all 4 tyres, positioning them so the points faced upward. The moment they tried to drive away from the tsunami, those tyres would shred to pieces. As I worked, I thought about all the times they had left me behind, forgotten about me, treated me like an inconvenience. All those family photos where I was cropped out or pushed to the edges. All those Christmas mornings where Vivian's gifts filled the entire living room while mine fit in a single small bag. All those birthdays where my celebrations were afterthoughts, squeezed in around Vivian's schedule. All those years of being told I should be grateful. All those years of being made to feel like I was the problem. Well, today they would learn what real problems looked like. When I finished with the car, I drove straight to Beacon Hill. The winding mountain road was mostly empty, which wasn't surprising given the late afternoon heat. Most tourists would be at the beach by now, soaking up the sun and enjoying the perfect weather, just like my family was doing. At exactly 5:30 p.m, I reached the mountain's observation deck. The view was breathtaking, miles of coastline stretching into the distance, the resort clearly visible as a cluster of white buildings against the azure water. From this height, everything looked peaceful, idyllic. I settled onto a bench with the bottle of water and bag of trail mix I had purchased at the hardware store. Then, I pulled out my phone and began the most satisfying part of my plan. Time to let my family know exactly what kind of celebration they were really having. At 5:35 p.m, my phone rang. Vivian's name flashed across the screen, accompanied by that sickeningly sweet photo she had insisted I use as her contact picture. Her posing with a champagne flute at some charity gala, looking every inch the socialite princess she believed herself to be. I let it ring 3 times before answering, savouring each electronic chime like a countdown to justice. "Clara, where are you?" Her voice was sharp with irritation. "I've been waiting at the spa for 20 minutes. They said you haven't checked in yet." I frowned, genuinely confused. Checked in for what? The couples treatment I booked for us? The sister bonding experience? Well, don't tell me you forgot. I specifically told you to meet me at the Serenity Spa at 5:30. The lie rolled off her tongue so smoothly, so effortlessly. In my previous life, this moment had never happened because I had already been locked in my room by then, crying over my split lip and bruised pride. But now, with the timeline slightly altered, Vivian was improvising, creating new ways to manipulate and control me even from a distance. "Vivian, you never mentioned any spa appointment," I said calmly. "I'm on my way home to get your swimsuit, remember?" "God, Clara, you're so selfish," she exploded. "I wanted to do something nice for us, and you're being completely unreasonable. Can't the swimsuit wait? This is important to me." Through the phone, I could hear the sound of ocean waves and distant laughter. She wasn't at any spa. She was still on the beach, probably lounging under an umbrella with a cocktail in her hand, making up stories to see how far she could push me. "Where are you really, Vivian?" I asked. There was a pause. Then her voice changed, becoming wheedling and manipulative. I'm at the beach bar. But, Clara, I really do want to spend time with you. Why don't you come back? We can do the spa thing tomorrow instead. I miss my big sister." The fake emotion in her voice made my stomach turn. How many times had she used that exact tone to get what she wanted from me? How many times had I fallen for it, desperate for any scrap of affection from my family? "That's so sweet of you, Vivian," I said, matching her false warmth with my own. "But I'm almost home now. I'll get your things and be back soon." "Actually," she said, and I could practically hear the gears turning in her manipulative little brain, "since you're going home anyway, could you also grab my lucky earrings? The diamond studs Daddy gave me for my 18th birthday? I want to wear them tomorrow." "Of course," I agreed. "Anything else while I'm there?" "Well, now that you mention it." And off she went, rattling off a list of additional demands. Her favourite perfume, her silk pyjamas, her collection of designer hair accessories, and on and on. Each request delivered with that same entitled expectation that I would simply comply. I let her talk, watching the clock on my phone tick closer to 6 p.m. At 5:45, I finally interrupted her. "Vivian, I have to ask you something," I said. "Do you actually love me?" The question caught her off guard. "What? Clara, what kind of weird question is that?" "I'm serious. Do you love me as your sister, or do you just love having someone to boss around?" There was a long silence. When she spoke again, her voice had dropped its full sweetness entirely. "Clara, you're being really weird right now. Are you having some kind of breakdown? Should I call Daddy?" "No breakdown," I assured her. "I'm just curious. After all these years, I realised I don't actually know how you feel about me." "You're my sister," she said carefully. "Of course I love you. But if I died tomorrow, would you miss me? Or would you just miss having someone to run your errands?" "Clara, stop being so dramatic. You're not going to die. You're just going to get my stuff and come back, and we're going to have a nice vacation. Why are you making this so complicated?" I almost laughed. Even when directly asked about her feelings, she couldn't help but turn the conversation back to what I could do for her. "You're right," I said. "I'm being silly. I'll see you soon, Vivian." "Good. And, Clara, don't forget the earrings. They're in my jewelry box, the pink one on my dresser." After I hung up, I called my father. He answered on the first ring, his voice booming with artificial joviality. He was clearly several drinks into his beach day. "Clara, sweetheart, how's the drive going?" The fake affection was almost worse than his usual coldness. At least when he was angry, he was honest about his feelings. "It's going well, Dad. I should be home soon." "Excellent, excellent. Elena and I are having such a wonderful time. The weather is perfect. The drinks are strong, and your sister looks absolutely radiant. She's going to make such a beautiful model." In the background, I could hear Elena's laughter and the clink of glasses. They were celebrating, toasting their perfect life and their perfect daughter while I drove across the state to serve them. "Dad, can I ask you something?" "Of course, honey. What's on your mind?" "Do you ever regret how you treated Mum?" I asked, referring to my biological mother, who had died when I was 12. "Do you think she would be proud of the man you became?" The line went quiet. When he spoke again, his voice was cautious. "Clara, why are you bringing up your mother? That's ancient history." "I just wonder sometimes what she would think of our family now, of how Vivian and Elena treat me, of how you let them... Now listen here." His voice hardened. "Elena has been nothing but good to you. She didn't have to accept you when we got married, but she welcomed you with open arms. And Vivian adores you. You're like a real sister to her." The revisionist history was breathtaking. Elena had made my life hell from day one, and Vivian had never treated me as anything more than unpaid help. But in his mind, they were saints, and I was the problem. "You're right, Dad. I'm sorry for bringing it up." "That's better. Now, hurry up with those items. We're planning to watch the sunset from the VIP deck, and Elena wants her jewelry for the photos." At 5:55 p.m, I received a group text from Elena in our family chat. "Clara, we decided to take a sunset catamaran cruise. So romantic. We'll be back late, so just leave everything in our rooms. XOXO." I stared at the message, feeling a cold satisfaction settle in my chest. A catamaran cruise. They would be out on the water when the wave hit. The ocean would take them the same way it had taken me. My phone buzzed with another text from Vivian. "OMG, Clara, this boat is amazing. Wish you were here. Just kidding, LOL. Someone needs to get my stuff. Take pics of the sunset from the balcony for me." At 5:58 p.m, I composed my final message to the family group chat. "Having such a wonderful time at home. The sunset from the mountains is absolutely breathtaking. I can see the entire coast from here. You three look like tiny ants from this height. Enjoy your boat ride." At 5:59 p.m, my father replied, "What mountains? Clara, where are you exactly?" I turned off my phone without answering. At exactly 6 p.m, the ocean began its deadly retreat. From my perch on Beacon Hill, I watched the tide pull back with supernatural speed, exposing vast stretches of seafloor that hadn't seen sunlight in millennia. The change was so dramatic, so unnatural, that even from 20 miles away I could see the dark expanse where water should have been. On the distant water, tiny white specks moved frantically, boats trying to return to shore as their captains realized something was terribly wrong. One of those specks carried my family. I pulled out a pair of binoculars I had purchased at the hardware store and trained them on the horizon. The wall of water was already forming, a dark line growing taller and wider with each passing second. It moved with the inexorable power of a mountain falling sideways, devouring everything in its path. By 6:15 p.m., the wave was visible to the naked eye, a towering black wall stretching across the entire visible coastline. The sound reached me even at this distance, a low, rumbling roar like the earth itself was being torn apart. The tsunami hit the resort at 6:17 p.m. Through my binoculars, I watched the 300-foot wall of water crash into the coastline with the force of 1,000 freight trains. The sound was indescribable, like the sky itself was being shredded apart. Buildings that had stood for decades vanished in seconds, crushed like paper dolls beneath the ocean's fury. The resort where we had been staying disappeared entirely, swallowed by the churning black water as if it had never existed. The luxury spa where Vivian had pretended to book our sister bonding appointment, the beach bar where my father had been drinking expensive cocktails, the VIP deck where Elena had planned to pose for sunset photos. All of it was gone. And somewhere in that chaos, on a catamaran that was now nothing more than splinters in the surge, my family had met their end. My phone had been buzzing constantly for the past 17 minutes. Even with the device turned off, the emergency broadcast system had somehow pushed through alerts about the tsunami, evacuation orders and missing person reports. When I finally powered it back on, I found 43 missed calls and over 100 text messages. The earliest messages, sent just after 6 p.m, were typical of my family, still trying to control me even as disaster struck. Dad, 6:02 p.m. Clara, answer your phone now. Something's wrong with the ocean. Elena, 6:03 p.m. Where are you? The captain is turning the boat around. This is not the time for your games. Vivian, 6:05 p.m. Clara, this isn't funny anymore. The water looks really weird and everyone is screaming. But as the minutes ticked by and the reality of their situation became undeniable, the tone shifted dramatically. Dad, 6:08 p.m. Clara, if you can see this, call the Coast Guard. Our boat engine died. The wave is getting bigger. Elena, 6:10 p.m. Clara, please, I'm begging you. Call for help. I'm sorry about everything. I'm so sorry. Vivian, 6:12 p.m. Clara, where are you? I can see the wave, and it's huge, and I'm scared, and I want to go home. Please help us. Please, please, please. Dad, 6:14 p.m. Tell my daughter I love her. Tell Clara I love her. I should have been a better father. I should have. The message cut off mid-sentence. After that, silence. I sat on the mountain observation deck, watching the flood water surge inland for miles, carrying with it the debris of thousands of lives. Cars, houses, trees, and bodies, all swept up in the ocean's relentless advance. The wave had been so massive that even from my safe perch 20 miles away, I could feel the ground trembling beneath my feet. As darkness fell, rescue helicopters appeared on the horizon, their searchlights cutting through the murky air. The water was beginning to recede now, leaving behind a landscape of utter devastation. What had once been a thriving coastal resort town was now a wasteland of mud, debris, and death. My phone rang. The caller ID showed a number I didn't recognize. Hello, I answered. Is this Clara Morrison? The voice was professional, official. This is Lieutenant Rodriguez with the Coast Guard Search and Rescue. We're calling emergency contacts for passengers who were aboard the Sunset Dreams catamaran this evening. I already knew what he was going to tell me, but I let him say it anyway. I'm sorry to inform you that the vessel was caught in the tsunami event. We've recovered some debris, but there are no survivors from that particular boat. We'll need you to come to the temporary morgue when it's safe to travel for identification purposes. I understand, I said quietly. Did they suffer? There was a pause. Mum, The wave was moving at approximately 600 miles per hour when it made landfall. It would have been very quick. After he hung up, I sat in the darkness and waited. Other survivors had made their way up the mountain throughout the evening. Families who had been hiking when the wave hit, teenagers who had been at the lookout point taking photos, an elderly couple who had been visiting the monastery near the summit. We huddled together around emergency fires that the park rangers had built, sharing water and granola bars while we watched the rescue operations below. Nobody asked why I had been on the mountain during the perfect beach weather. Nobody questioned why I seemed so well prepared with supplies and warm clothes. Disaster has a way of making people focus on survival rather than suspicious coincidences. 3 days later, after the floodwaters had fully receded, I was called to identify the bodies. There wasn't much left to identify. The Coast Guard had recovered what remained of my father from a debris field 12 miles inland. Elena was found wrapped around a stop sign, her design and resort wear shredded beyond recognition. Vivian's body was never found. She had simply vanished into the ocean's depths, along with her dreams of modelling and her collection of designer swimsuits. The funeral was held 2 weeks later. I stood at the graveside in a black dress I had bought specifically for the occasion, listening to a minister who had never met my family deliver generic platitudes about their loving spirits and generous hearts. The few attendees, mostly my father's business associates and Elena's social circle, offered me their condolences with the uncomfortable awkwardness of people who had never paid much attention to the family's dynamics. They spoke about what a tragedy it was, how young and beautiful Vivian had been, how devoted Elena had been as a stepmother. I nodded and thanked them for coming, playing the role of the grieving daughter and sister. But that night, alone in the house that was now entirely mine, I opened a bottle of champagne, the expensive kind my father had always saved for special occasions, and toasted my freedom. The inheritance was substantial. Along with the house, there were 3 rental properties, a portfolio of investments, and 2 life insurance policies that named me as the sole beneficiary. Elena had never bothered to update her will after marrying my father, assuming she would outlive both of us. My father's policy was ironclad. As his only biological child, everything came to me. I was 20 years old and worth over $4 million. More importantly, I was alone. For the first time in 8 years, I could walk through my own home without being criticised, ordered around, or made to feel like an unwelcome guest. I could eat what I wanted, when I wanted. I could watch television without someone changing the channel. I could sleep in on weekends without being assigned chores. The silence was beautiful, but late at night, when the house was dark and still, I sometimes heard echoes of their voices. Vivian calling for her big sister to bring her things. Elena lecturing me about gratitude and family obligations. My father explaining why Vivian deserved better treatment than I did. And sometimes, in my dreams, I saw the wave coming toward me instead of them. I woke up gasping, remembering the terror of my first death, the helpless panic of being trapped while water rushed in around me. In those moments, I reminded myself why I had made the choice I made. They had locked me in that room to die. They had fled without looking back, leaving me to face the tsunami alone. Their deaths hadn't been murder. They had been justice. The ocean had simply corrected the balance. 6 months after the funeral, I received an unexpected visitor. I was in the garden, planting roses in the spot where Elena used to grow her precious orchids, when a woman approached the front gate. She was in her 50s, with greying hair and kind eyes, wearing a simple blue dress and carrying a manila folder. "Clara Morrison?" she asked. I stood up, brushing dirt from my gardening gloves. "Yes?" "My name is Detective Patricia Wong. I was hoping we could talk about the day of the tsunami." My blood turned to ice, but I kept my expression neutral. "Of course. Please come in." We sat in the living room, the same room where my family had berated me for refusing to fetch Vivian's swimsuit. Detective Wong opened her folder and pulled out several photographs. "These are cell phone tower records from the day of the tsunami," she said, spreading them across the coffee table. "According to these records, your phone was on Beacon Hill at the time of the wave, not at your family's house as you initially stated." I looked at the papers, my heart pounding. "I don't understand." "Clara, we know you weren't home getting your sister's things. We know you were on that mountain, safe from the wave, while your family died. The question is, did you know what was coming?" The room fell silent except for the ticking of my father's antique clock, the one that had counted down the minutes to my family's death. "Detective Wong," I said carefully, "are you asking me if I can predict natural disasters?" She leaned forward, her eyes never leaving mine. "I'm asking you if you had advanced knowledge of the tsunami, because if you did, and you chose not to warn your family—" "That would make me what, exactly?" I asked. "Psychic or just lucky?" She studied my face for a long moment. Then she gathered up her papers and stood to leave. "Be very careful, Clara," she said. "Sometimes the universe has a way of balancing things out. What goes around comes around." After she left, I sat in the empty house and smiled. Let the detective investigate all she wanted. There was no evidence of supernatural knowledge, no proof of deliberate malice. Just a young woman who had been fortunate enough to be in the right place at the right time when tragedy struck. But as I looked out the window at the garden where I was building my new life, I couldn't shake the feeling that Detective Wong's warning carried more weight than she realized. The universe had given me a second chance, and I had used it to orchestrate my family's destruction. What would it give me next time?